Well, thank you, Chair. I probably will indulge in a bit of detail at the start of the meeting because maybe, as often been the case, in the space between submitting the report to you and being here today, a lot has changed operationally. So I think if I give a sort of thumbnail sketch of the situation that we're facing, I think it's suffice to say the overall tone in both the operational threat and the resourcing picture is stark and sombre. But I'll give you some details and obviously we'll get going with the meeting. As you said at the start, Chair, and welcome for those comments, that we're now dealing with a severe terrorist threat, which means an attack is highly likely right across Northern Ireland. I think the thing to stress for members and beyond today is that the main focus of these attacks continues to be police officers, both on and off duty, as you say, and their families. It will also include prison officers and military personnel. And the style of attack that we're dealing with and trying to frustrate is gun attack and bomb attacks on these people by a small number of determined dissident terrorists. What this means is that working with our security partners, there's an assessment about an increase in their intent and capability to cause serious harm to us in the next 6 months. This comes at a time, as you know, of unprecedented policing demand for us across Northern Ireland. And reflecting, just as we sit here today, on the sort of normal sort of attrition of events and people, since we last sat here, another 37 officers have left policing. So not only are we doing with more, as we've said more than once, we're doing it increasingly with less. With all this in mind, and working with the team that we've got here today, after careful assessment, we've decided that in order to maximise the safety of our officers and staff and the wider community, it is necessary to increase our operational capacity immediately, and I'll give you some details in a minute. In policing terms, we've initiated what we call Operation Inspire Level 4. So what that means is that in some cases, operational officers across the service have moved to 12-hour shifts, and officers in a number of non-frontline roles will move to support the collective effort to focus on preventing further terrorist outrage and actually increasing our patrol visibility across the country. Many members will realise that this is the first time in a number of years we've had to activate this plan, and it's a reflection of the quite difficult and exceptional circumstances we find ourselves in. Mark is going to coordinate our operation response. The requirement for this uplift will be kept under continuing review, given some of the other events we're dealing with, which I'll address shortly. The initial period we assess of working at this pace and tempo will be about 10 days, and then we'll review it after that, and it may or may not continue. The uplift is supported by quite a detailed and coordinated command and control structure, which will encompass a number of keynote events over the next few weeks. If that wasn't enough, as you know, we're on the cusp of the Easter period, which is traditionally quite busy. There's a significant policing operation now in place that's been led by ACC Singleton over the 4-day period. To give you some sense, on top of everything else of scale, there are now 90 notified parades and events taking place between Good Friday the 7th of April and Easter Tuesday the 11th. There's also a full programme of football matches on the evening Friday the 7th. We've got, again, command and control structures in place right across the country, and then these structures will flow into the arrangements for the visit of the President of the United States next week, which ACC Todd is leading for us. In addition to the number of notified parades, our planning is based on experience of the operation in recent years, which also takes into account the risk and likelihood of policing non-notified parades. This may include, just some members are aware, the display of paramilitary uniform and paramilitary shows of strength, and we will have resources and a plan in place to deal with that, including evidence gathering assets. We're also assuming that attempts will be made to draw us into situations which may likely cause disorder over the next few days. We would, of course, encourage everyone planning these events to take part in them in a way that's safe, peaceful, and lawful. In relation to the sort of other widening policing context, and I know there may be some issues later, as you referenced at the start, we've also been dealing with a dispute amongst Criminality in the Ards and North Down area, which again, between Mark and Bobby, they've been leading on. And obviously the tone and context of this is a feud amongst paramilitary groups. We have put additional resources, as many of you have seen over the last week, into that area, dedicated to prevention, disruption and investigation. And to date, we've made 13 arrests. There are 8 charges and 1 person reported to the Public Prosecution Service. And we want to place on record our thanks for the cooperation we've enjoyed in the last week from responsible members of the community and also from our partners who are working with us more long term in relation to community safety options. And again, we may come back to that. The other issue, of course, we're dealing with, it's hugely important for us, is Operation Rondoletto. That's the policing operation which wraps around all the Good Friday Agreement events, which start clearly with the visit of the President next week. He will arrive, I think it's now in the public domain, in Northern Ireland on Tuesday evening, the 11th of April, and will leave on the Wednesday the 12th. Engagements are being planned for in a number of parts of the Greater Belfast area, and the Prime Minister is also expected to visit Northern Ireland during this time. So all of this is under the command of ACC Chris Todd. The second phase of the policing operation will be between the 17th and 19th of April, and a number of politicians who were in office at the time of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, as well as current office holders, will be in attendance at these events. At the same time, between the 18th and 20th of April, there will also be a high-profile Cyber UK conference at the International Conference Centre and other city centre venues, which are attracting significant numbers of people, both from the political space and professional background. And also, we're now seeing increasing political interest in the All-Star Ice Hockey game on the 19th of April involving a Ukrainian team. The policing operation will be significant, and our role obviously is to facilitate all of these events in a safe way and provide protection to the variety of visitors, politicians, participants, and also to keep the venues that are associated with these events safe. Only yesterday, the Deputy Chief Constable and I actually tested the key operational plans that Chris is putting together to get assurance that we're doing all that we can. Mindful of the threat level we've talked about, a theme that runs throughout these plans is to assure the safety of our officers and staff whilst they're continuing to police the country to keep people safe. We've touched previously on the notion of mutual aid. Simply, we do not have the capacity to resource all of this ourselves, given the completing sort of requests that we're dealing with. I'm obviously really grateful to colleagues from across UK policing that have now provided in the region of 300 officers that will be based here over the next 2 weeks to provide specialist support services to help police some of that operation. And my proposal will be over the next few days to try and see whether staying myself, to assure myself in terms of the arrangements we've made to make sure that their visit is well resourced and they get appropriate support. So that's a big thank you to them. Some of the examples will be, for example, specialist motorcycle escort officers, firearm specialists and search specialists. You will see people from other parts of the UK here. Clearly, given where we have started today, this will drain the resource that's available for day-to-day policing and also put an additional cost pressure into our already stretched budget. We assess it will be in the region of £7 million to police the events over the next few days in relation to Rondoletto, but that cost may change up or down as we get more clarity. And finally, I think it's worth stressing, Chair, as you hinted at in the start, that if all this was not enough, our budgetary position worsened last night with the announcement of further cuts, where we estimate this will amount to an equivalent of 20% of our opening budget. So this is significant. Pamela and the team are starting to supply information to the Department of Justice, which was asked for last night, but this is unprecedented and amounts, I suppose, to the key tension that we're now managing as a team, sort of an unprecedented rise in threat and work for the police service at the time of shrinking resource will have to be realised within the next few months. We aren't going to balance the budget given the scale of the ask at the moment, and we may explain that further during the course of this meeting. Thank you, Chair.